A meaningful offer is about identity. It's about a different future. It's about resolving conflicting values.
Welcome to Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. With your host, executive leadership coach and CEO of the Granger Network, Kari Granger, and me, Paul Adams, CEO of Sound Financial Group. This episode completes our series on coordinating with precision, how to make meaningful offers.
Welcome back to the Leadership Impact. Today we're speaking about how to make meaningful offers. We are in our last episode of our mini-series on coordinating with precision. And inside of this series, we've looked at making requests, we've looked at making promises, we've looked at how do you deal with complaints in the midst of coordinating with others. And this last one, you almost could say offers might belong in our series on new futures. And, we debated that. But here's the thing, when we coordinate with others, we're constantly extending offers. In fact, the extension of an offer gives the whole reason to coordinate to begin with. So, Paul, today, let's talk about offers. What do you have?
I think one of the most key things I've seen go wrong for people launching businesses, growing business, or trying to build an initiative inside their existing teams is just that word you used, is missing relevance with their offers for the people that they're trying to make them to. Or in the case of the example I brought today, that this person wanted to have people that would be the carrier of his message to the end use clients. And I think that was where the mistake was made. And then I think people are so unfamiliar with getting assessments in return about how to make something more meaningful and relevant, they miss it, which is kind of the second part I wanted to have us talk about today.
Oh, good.
So let me give you an example of this company. The names and some of the business model have been changed to protect the innocent as usual. This case was a unique business offer. And what it was is for, let's say, you and your spouse. There's all kinds of things, documents you keep, passwords, all that stuff that needs to be unlocked for somebody someday. And the story was this person was a former special operative for maybe an agency for the government that had just 3 initials, or maybe an agency that didn't even have a name. And it was like the letter to the children, letter to the spouse, along with all the passwords, bills, where they have bank accounts, all of it in one place. And the online version of this that was rolled out would be an online encrypted vault that has all of those things, that then periodically just sends your primary email box a communication saying, hey, you still up, around, and kicking? If you reply from your email, it stays vaulted. If you don't reply to that email, then it waits and sends a couple more replies over the next 30 days. If it does not see anything from those, then it would alert your spouse. Really cool idea to keep all of the important documents, all the passwords. We're constantly updating, but it's not like you run over to your spouse that day and say, here, I changed the iTunes password on my iTunes. But it would allow all of that to build up and release to the family, which is brilliant. Even I thought that, what a great tool people could use in organizing themselves. The relevance issue that I noticed was, and the company has since been completely wound down and no longer in existence. I was looking for their website right before our call. And where the relevance was missed was who he tried to be the message carrier to the end users that would pay, some small amount of dollars per month to have the service. And what he attempted to do was have the financial advising community be who would carry the message for their clients. And what was missed, is that the financial advisors kind of thought they do that. I don't think they do it nearly as well, but it's like, oh yeah, if your spouse needs to know where all the accounts are, that's why you have me. And I'm that quarterback who does this. And of course, it leaves a lot of gaps, but it wasn't like the advisors felt like they could carry that message directly to the clients because it somehow diminished their role. And I think the whole reason that business model fell apart and didn't result in the kind of success he could have is he chose the wrong audience to be his message carrier. And as a result, nobody got the message out.
Or it wasn't a compelling offer to the financial advisors.
Yes.
It wasn't a relevant offer for the advisors. If it was a relevant offer for them, like expands your business or, allows you to have this certain identity in the financial advising world, that would have taken on a different meaning.
Yes.
Yeah. So who he's really making the question is who is he really providing the service or product for, right? Was it the financial advising community or was it for that family on the end? A little bit of both, but I wonder, just in your telling of it, did he not see that the offer wasn't just for that family? The offer was also for the people who would, the carriers of that, right?
Yes.
The financial advisors or whoever else.
Yep. And he even tried to shape it for the advisors, except his offer came a little late to the advisory community because, like, every one of our clients gets an online encrypted vault when they become a client of Sound Financial Group. And many advisors are starting to do that just as a already existing value add. Now, it doesn't have the features that this Manila envelope platform did, but that didn't matter because it literally put him in a position where the business starved for the lack of new customers engaging in the platform.
Yeah. One of the things to make relevant, compelling, even Julio Lala, he used to say irresistible offers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to make those kind of offers, we have to listen deeply. And again, in your example, I wonder, did he listen to those financial advisors? Did he find out what do they fundamentally care about? I think that we keep bringing this fundamental care thing up over and over again because it's just so core to being effective with people in the world, and to leading. Another thing I hear is, meaningful offers are not about the product or the service.
Mm-hmm.
Now that should make some of us go, what do you mean? What I offer to my clients or my prospects, or if not in an organization, what I offer to my employees, whatever, but it's not actually about the product or the service. A meaningful offer is about identity. It's about a different future. It's about resolving, conflicting values. It's about life changes. In other words, meaningful offers are about the kind of the existential force behind, the product or the service. It's meaningful offers are about more than just the product or service. I'm a coaching firm, and the least meaningful offer is coaching. Would you like coaching? Well, why? No, what I want to offer you is a new identity, a new future, a way to fulfill on what you really value, or a way to resolve conflicting values. One of the companies that I have so much respect for, and it's so counterintuitive that I would frequent, is Panera Bread's. And why is counterintuitive is because my family and I eat gluten-free. So if I eat gluten-free, why would I go to a restaurant based on glutinous bread, right?
Yes.
They don't even offer gluten-free options the last time I checked. Okay.
Yeah.
But I love them. And why do I love them? Because what they stand for, it gives me an identity. It's not about providing food. It's about, for them, providing an everyday oasis, an ally for wellness, clean foods, warm relationships, sustainable farming. Mm-hmm. And these guys, I found out, they led the revolution in safe food, in fast food. So they're the ones who created the no-no list. They're the ones who bought antibiotic-free chicken at $17 a pound in the beginning because, they weren't even making a profit on their sandwiches, right? You don't know. Most of us don't know anything about this. I learned because I got to give a talk to them at one point, to their leaders. So even though I don't eat gluten, I frequent this restaurant because what they offer for me is an identity. What they offer for me is a way to fulfill on my values. I think about this situation and I wonder, was he trying to sell a product versus a future versus an identity? Like, for example, what's the fundamental value, for the end user, well, there's a future he's selling or security or,
Hmm.
something like that. And what about the financial advisors? It just doesn't sound to me like there's anything compelling that he was offering those people in terms of identity or future or values or possibility.
Totally agree. And in having watched the offer made, he did a great job of crafting the offer for the end user. And that's probably where his all of his efforts should have gone, was whatever it took to get his message in front of end users. And what he told, and I've seen this now as we talk about, I've seen this with many products where somebody goes and talks to the person who is the introducer, the center of influence, the person that may drive more people to whatever platform, and they just tell the customer's story again and don't you want people in your world to have that experience, instead of talking about the experience to the center of influence for having made all of those introductions in this guy's case.
Yeah, so good. So overlooked.
And it's so easy to miss. There's one that happened for my firm just a little less than 2 years ago. So a client of mine who's from across the other side of the country works in marketing, specifically with some very large financial institutions. And one of the pieces of feedback that he gave us was the biggest benefit of our work together was my wife and I getting on the same page with our money. That was worth everything we paid you, regardless of how much better our money is doing, how much more efficient it is, the fact that we better understand our decisions. The two of us being on the same page is the most valuable thing. Now, I had heard it lots of times in the past. I had never heard it from somebody who had this gentleman's deep background. He's a well-known, very high-end executive consultant in the realms of marketing. And it landed with me differently. I revisited all the times I've heard people say that, and yet we never made that part of our first initial conversation with clients as an outcome they would expect. We changed that, and it has made it exceedingly easier both for us in a new client attraction and for the clients themselves to make the decision, because we're now making one of the promises we most consistently deliver but didn't talk about prior, because it turns out it's very, very relevant to our audience. And that leads me to kind of my second part to the same question, Kari, on today's example, which is people are not used to hearing assessments. I had heard that assessment multiple times before. In our sample case of this manila envelope company, of being able to have everything loaded in electronically and everything would be there for your family if you didn't make it home, was all the feedback was given, but most times people are not used to hearing really good assessments and actually integrating that feedback into them becoming more relevant to their customers. How can people watch for that? And what's the feedback they should be taking in that would be relevant? And maybe what are the things that they need to be polite about taking in the feedback, but then not listen to?
Yeah, I think it's in the way that you listen. If you're listening for needs, needs have to do with the way the world is today, right? So if you address the needs, that's great, but it's not going to be very innovative. See, your clients maybe didn't even know that they needed to be on the same page, husband and wife, right?
Yeah.
No one needed an iPhone. No one needed an app for a stranger to pick them up in their own car instead of a taxi cab. We had taxis. Nobody needed that, right? Nobody needed, an internet site where you can buy paper towels, a turquoise remote control car, gluten-free crackers, a business jacket, and a bag for your hockey skates all in the matter of 15 minutes either.
Yes.
Right. So I think when you listen for needs, you're listening in a really limited way. I think that when you listen for values, when you listen for areas of conflict and tension, when you listen for people going through different life stages where it was this way, but it needs to be that way, I think when you listen for these things, something else starts to reveal itself. It's like, wow, people don't even know that it's a problem that the husband and wife aren't on the same thing in terms of money. They just, enact their they kind of survive each other, or they know each other, and they just do the same habit patterns. But as soon as you connect to those values or those things that are really fundamentally important to people, make your offer about that. Did that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's that ability to take, I think what I had always done is I accepted the compliment.
Versus listening.
Yes, listening it as what made it relevant to them and might make it more relevant for others. So even as you give me that skill, I think about how often somebody has said, hey, it's really great. My spouse and I are on the same page because we worked with Corey or we worked with Jeff or we worked with you. And I would go, oh, good. That's great. We get that feedback from a lot of people. Really appreciate it. But not revisiting about whether or not that is something so relevant that everybody's getting in value from the offer. And therefore, I should put it earlier on in the process. But now it makes me think about all of the products out there and how far from the initial invention we can be from what our offer's actual value is. Most companies we know of out there, from Facebook to Twitter to Netflix, all of their models evolved and grew out of what they were doing prior in an attempt to become more relevant to their customer.
I love what you just said, and it's something I'm going to take a note for myself, is the thing you said about how do I accept even positive feedback? You know, when I hear positive feedback, I hear, oh, goody, they liked it. I did good.
Yes.
Now, you know, if I hear negative feedback and I'm in a good mood, then I look at how can I change this to make it better?
Yes.
If I'm in a bad mood, I just try to make them wrong, you know, and completely, you know, diminish. You know,
I was going to say, or I give them some reason why we have to do it that way as a way to satisfy them with the way that it is, instead of, to your point, like cut over and saying, does this, like the question I think our audience could ask themselves this week is, a compliment or a critique that you get,
what does this have to do with relevance?
Yeah. Is this relevant? Like, is it relevant to my relevance would be the question I would want everybody to ask as they go through this next week. Is this relevant to my relevance? And do I need to reflect on the way that our offer is being made, whether it be to employees on your team or end use customers of what your company does? But is the feedback you're getting relevant to your relevance with the next person you're engaging with your offer?
Yeah, really, really good. And I'm really going to take that thing about positive feedback, man. I just love it. I love positive feedback, but I haven't used it that effectively. I haven't been like, whoa, that piece is relevant. Or even asking more questions. What was it that you liked about it? Tell me so I can make sure, you know, I know what was relevant for you.
Yeah. Yep. And I think there's like, as a leader, there's a first stage of development, which is where you quit. When somebody says, thank you so much for doing this, the first thing you want to answer is no, thank you. And that diminishes their thanks rather than just letting them know you're welcome. And then that in and of itself is a practice many leaders never get to. Then crossing that threshold to asking in a level deeper as to what was most valuable to them, and then thinking about it from your relevance perspective, I think is the thing everybody can go in armed this week with a new way to experience all of the feedback they're going to get, positive or negative, to anchoring it back to the relevance of either the offer you make to your team, like employees on a team, your company's offer to those team members, and or your offer to the outside end user customer of what it is that you do.
Yeah. Great, Paul. Thank you.
So earlier on, you all heard Kari mention about the future that's getting created from your offer. Now that future could be members on your team. That future could be the end use customer. And that we're asking you this week to take in all of the compliments and or critiques into your world, thinking, how is this relevant to my relevance? But maybe even more so, just think about what is the future story that other people are thinking when they engage your company. What is that story of the future that they're telling themselves? And if you don't know, this may be the week to just kind of ask in and ask people, why did you engage us? Why did you join this company? And why is that meaningful to your future? Because that's going to start getting in the end user's words of your offers, whether or not it's relevant to them and how it's relevant. That's going to let you better shape up your offers going forward, making more meaningful and more relevant offers, because it's going to land in the future that they want to create. Once again, we hope that this episode has been a contribution to your leadership impact. Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. Subscribe now at grangernetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And to support you in your leadership impact, we've created an exclusive set of guiding questions on today's topic. Just text the word offer to 900-900 and you'll receive the link. If you like what you're hearing, you'll love our online courses, which will transform your performance and leadership over 4 months with videos, practices, and group Q&As. These online courses are our approach to essential leadership development for professionals. Learn more at grangernetwork.com and join us next week as we wrap up our first season.